Ladies and gentlemen, welcome in once again to the Duval Dive. Of course, I'm Kyle Nash, student of the game, here ready to talk to all of you out there in the Duval Devout, talking about the James Gladstone / Liam Coen press conference that took place earlier today, Tuesday, heading into the draft. Of course, still a week and a half before the festivities on Thursday. April 24th take place, and still some preparation going on leading up to that, but some very interesting stuff to come out of this meeting. Of course, there was a lot of exploration from the media folk out there about, one particular concept, intangibly rich. Yes, that term came out plenty throughout this particular availability, and shouts to T. Wiggs, Tony Wiggins of the Jaguars, Locked On Jaguars podcast, who will be doing the mock draft with us on Wednesday night, asking about the definition of intangibly rich. And he gave, James Gladstone, the GM, gave this response of, you know it if you've seen it kind of thing, and identifying guys who are that. How would he explain? He was asked how he would explain that to his players. He kind of gave the answer, paraphrasing along the lines of, I don't have to work hard to explain it to them because they already are if they're in my system, kind of a thing. So it wasn't a bad answer per se, but certainly an entertaining moment that jumped off. But a few things that were out there, and again, credit to the great Mia O'Brien, who was there on site asking questions to James Gladstone and Liam Coen, along with everybody else that was there. But in particular, Mia O'Brien asked the question about preparation and the Jaguars system. That is James Gladstone's kind of, I don't want to say it's just analytics, but sort of a method, if you will, that it is part of the draft process, the proprietary advantage that James Gladstone kind of referenced throughout the conversation with the media there, and that piece is still building. And I think what the real takeaway from that is that James Gladstone with the Rams had a particular way of doing things, very new age stuff, including something like the Jaguars system, which is an acronym, JAARS, right? It's basically putting together the analytics and the approach to help them build their big board that literally every team has on draft day, right? That element, and hearing him talk about not taking the certain stereotypic paths for evaluation, right? The infamous top 30 visits, as he would call them, on-site evaluations, whatever the terminology is, how that really wasn't part of the process for the Jacksonville Jaguars, because frankly, and the good point that was made is those become sort of public demonstrations, not only of how the player may have performed based on what comes out of it, but if you have a workout with a particular player or person, it sends reverberations to other of the 31 teams out there that may sort of glean what it is you're trying to accomplish. So with that in mind, the very interesting question pops up of how much of this draft, this off season, will be affected by growing pains, right? Whenever you're installing a new system, that's something that's actually at risk. Is what pains will you realize from the transition, like other members of draft staff, the previous front office, whether you like what Trent Baalke did or not. The truth is he did a bunch of work leading up to this process because he didn't know he was going to get fired until he get fired. That's the way that kind of works. So having limited time, essentially coming in late, is going to put this year's staff at a disadvantage, especially when you have an executive VP in Tony Pacelli, in Liam Coen, the head coach, in James Gladstone himself, all guys doing it at that particular position for the first time for an NFL franchise. So I thought that's something that jumped out to both me and Travis D. Holmes, who was on site, by the way, for Big Cat Country. Make sure you check out his takeaways there too, bigcatcountry.com. But another thing that happened is, and I believe this was Mia O'Brien again at 1010XL, asked about the receiver cores currently in place who would help be mentors, who would be playmakers to kind of take the load off of Brian Thomas Jr., BTJ. And again, another fascinating thing is Coach Coen mentioned both running backs, using the term our running backs, both running backs, right? Coach Coen mentioned Parker Washington. Coach Coen mentioned De'Ami Brown. Coach Coen mentioned Brenton Strange, the tight end, as being something. But a key name still missing, considering how much he's being paid on his contract, is also receiver Gabe Davis. Now, I don't know how much we should read into that, but this is not the first opportunity that this coaching staff has had to list him among the people that were going to be in consideration for future activity, right? We pointed out here on the Duval Dive, and others out there also have cited that the depth chart, such that it is on the site right now, which means basically nothing or may mean everything, who knows, but that certain players are listed on it and others are excluded, right? Gabe Davis has not been mentioned repeatedly in conversations leading up to it. Now, what I can offer to the conversation is not this past Saturday, but the one before, UCF's first open practice. Gabe Davis was in attendance. Yeah, I know, Kyle. It's another excuse for you to bring up the black and gold banneret. But I was there in that capacity covering UCF. I see Gabe Davis. I go over, I shake his hand, say, hey, listen, man, looking forward to seeing you in a camp in a couple months. And without realizing what I had just asked him, he had answered me before I could really process what I just did, completely on accident, innocuously, harmlessly. He responded without hesitation himself, yes, sir. Now, I will say he could have just as been innocuously from the hip responding to me without thinking anything of it, because he and I go back. He knows my face. I've covered him since, 2018 and a little beyond, when he was a receiver at UCF. That's why I was there in the first place, supporting his college program, all of that. So will he be at camp? Sure. He seems to think so. With his contract, it's hard to deny that the team kind of has to put him there. But how big of a role is he expected to play, I think, is still a big question mark. I think his health is still a big question mark. I think his health is the reason why they're playing that close to the vest. They don't know what to expect of Gabe Davis. And frankly, if they put anything out there on the market, it would hurt his value as an asset if they're wanting to be in a position to move or trade him or some way, shape, or form. Who knows? Maybe he's an asset that they're going to trade for picks or something on draft day. Maybe after all of this, they go through camp, Gabe Davis is completely healed and becomes the next Zay Jones type, to be that role player that makes big catches in important moments, kind of like he did at Buffalo as a rookie. So it's just fascinating again to see Gabe Davis not get mentioned when Parker Washington was on the tip of the tongue. That's a very interesting takeaway I had as well. And also, both James Gladstone and Liam Coen were asked as a duo about being among, or if not the worst in the league, converting third and ones, third and shorts. And the conversation about being physically tough and strong and that being promised happened again. And both Liam Coen and James Gladstone made a point throughout the rest of the press conference that physical and mental toughness is something that is basically, a priority for them to find in any of their players. And I know, while that seems kind of well, obviously, Kyle, no, I want my players mentally weak and physically flaccid. No, obviously no NFL franchise wants that. But I think what it does entail, I think the takeaway from that is that these guys are listening to you out there, to Duuuval, those that are reeling from the promises that were made to you by Trent Baalke in the past. So take any of that and all that for what it's worth. Obviously, it is lying season. Obviously, teams are playing things close to the chest as possible. But those are the few telling signs and things that kind of jumped out to me. And I did talk to Travis D. Holmes as he was leaving the facility afterward there too. So that was kind of the conversation we had, and wanted to make sure all of those thoughts got shared with you. Of course, make sure you check out whatever Travis D. Holmes writes with Big Cat Country. Check him out, Travis D. Holmes, on all the socials. That's the kind of thing he does, and he'll keep everybody, including me, up to date on certain things. And he will be also with us here Wednesday night as we host Locked On Jaguars and Locked On NFL's Tony Wiggins for our mock draft leading up to what I guess at that point will be 8 days, a week and a day, whatever you want to call it, up to the NFL draft. So we're getting close to the draft time. Make sure you check that episode out, by the way. And then later this week, we are going to do tier rankings for the team needs. Feels like something we should have done already. That's why we're getting it out of the way. Make sure you get in on that special Friday episode as well. And then draft week, we got a whole lot of stuff going on that we'll talk to you about on Friday. So I already shouted out Travis D. Holmes. Of course, I am Kyle Nash, the student of the game. You find me on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at the SOTG. Check me out on Facebook as the student of the game. Check out my writings on Fan First Sports Network for both the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Orlando Magic, where I will be headed tonight to the Kia Center for their play-in game against the Atlanta Hawks as they play for the right to face the Boston Celtics in the NBA playoffs. So a big game for that. And also check out my work with the Black and Gold Banneret covering UCF football and basketball. I was at spring practice again this morning, had a conversation with Jakari Henderson and some of the defensive backs. So make sure you check out Night Shift YouTube channel as well as the Night Shift podcast, where I talked about some of the transfers, Dylan Risk, the quarterback, transferring out. And we also talk about some of the basketball stuff for the transfer portal to UCF. So a whole lot of stuff going on. And just some very interesting observations from the Jacksonville Jaguars press conference with Liam Coen, the head coach, and James Gladstone, the GM. So for Travis D. Holmes, I am Kyle Nash, student of the game. Until next time, everyone, class